Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And if you've been following me at all this past week, you know I've been on an epic train trip across, across most of the U.S., I guess, from Fargo west to Seattle and back. Quite a fun journey, and not the least fun part was staying with my friends Sherry and Jim and spending time with Beth and Kendra and seeing James Taylor in concert. It was really fun. Lots to talk about with the train trip. Suffice it to say, it was something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm really glad I did it. It's not what I wanted to talk about today in this episode, however. I want to talk about rules today for a few reasons. I've been thinking about what would happen if we didn't have rules. And this has taken me down a whole bunch of different rabbit trails. I think about how the train ran on schedule and how we, as people riding the train, adhered to the rules. We abided by the rules of the train, and how we had to sometimes wait for freight trains on our commuter train, and just what it takes to make sure that trains don't hit each other. They have to switch tracks. There are things you just do, and sometimes you just accept that rules are what they are. But then when you have a lot of time, like I did on the train, to think about things, then I get into a lot of wonder and ponder modes. And today I want to talk about rules. And the way I got to this was because I've been doing a lot of keynotes recently, and I have 3 or 4 yet to go in the next few weeks. And one of the things that I'm laying down as kind of a starting point for every talk I'm giving lately is to talk about fundamentals or talk about foundations. And when you're building anything, you need to have a solid foundation under it. So I'm calling that fundamentals, the fundamentals of the talk I'm going to give. And the way I'm thinking about the word fundamental is just fun and mental with duh in the middle. And what that means to me is when you hear something that we can build upon and you go, well, yeah, duh, of course, then you know you've hit on a fundamental. And so, as we're building fundamentals, and I've broken the word down into fun and mental with duh in the middle, I want to focus on the word fun because building fundamentals shouldn't be a chore necessarily. It doesn't have to be a chore, let's put it that way. And if we are to make this these building blocks fun, one way we could think about that is to think of it as a game. Games are fun, usually, right? Games have a beginning and an end. We usually know what we're doing to get from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. We may not always know how we get there because sometimes you have to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes you skip over spaces on the board. There are different ways to play games, but one thing that makes every game a game is that it has rules. And so I've been thinking about the rules of anything, the rules we adhere to, we abide by when we know what they are. In America, in North America, can I say that? I think it's all of North America. We drive on the right side of the road, as opposed to the left side. In Britain, I know, and maybe Australia, they drive on the left. And there are rules that you follow. You look to the left instead of to the right when cars are coming toward you, when the cars are driving on a certain side of the road. And we just get to the point where we adhere to these rules because it's what we know. So, rules are there for a purpose. And then I started thinking about rules of any organization you belong to. They could be standards, they could be non-negotiables, you can call them whatever you want to. But no matter what you're involved with, if there aren't rules or standards or ways of doing things, it can get really chaotic because people wouldn't know if we're driving on the right side or the left side of the road. And so knowing the standards or knowing the lay of the land can be very helpful when things can feel chaotic. If you go from a country where you speak a certain language and then you go to another country where they don't speak that language, it can be kind of daunting. And so you want to get some acclimation and you want to kind of get yourself kind of set in that new space. And so I've been thinking about this concept of rules for a couple of reasons. One is because this morning when I got off the train at 3:30 this morning, I went home and took a nap, and then I went and spoke at a networking group here in Fargo. And it was a networking group that used to be part of a networking organization I was a regional partner for. They aren't anymore. I'm no longer with that organization. And I started thinking about rules as it relates to that organization in particular today. No matter what you're joining, you probably have rules to keep things in order. And this organization had specific rules. And when it got to the point where the members of the organization didn't really feel in alignment with the rules of the organization, members started dropping out. And this chapter I spoke for today was one of those. It continues to meet. They meet together. They do the networking part of what they were doing when they were part of this national organization, but they do it in their own way. And they do have their own rules. They call them expectations. And I really like the way they put that on a piece of paper that they hand out to everybody when they come in. And they have these expectations, non-negotiable standards, whatever you might want to call them, rules. And they have regular attendance is expected in this organization, which I found interesting because the organization does not have any kind of due structure. So you don't have to pay money to belong to this organization, which is very distinct from the one I was a partner for. And this group doesn't pay dues. However, if you're absent and you don't have a sub, you pay a $10, what they call an attendance tax. And then those fees are donated to a nonprofit organization quarterly. So that's kind of a cool way to get around paying dues and knowing that you either want to be there or have someone to represent you there so that your spot is always there and represented. So they say through regular timely attendance, true relationships will be created. I really like that. They also have as one of their expectations to engage. Come ready to energize and be energized. Prepare and practice what you're there to say. Engage with the organization. The next one is to develop. We will grow personally and professionally through weekly training. Our focus is to go deeper, not wider, with recruiting and maintaining quality group members. So that's another of their expectations. They also say connect is one of theirs. Dare to connect. At least one-on-one each month. Connect on a real level. Open up. Be vulnerable. Accept invitations. Leave nothing for the next life. That's kind of cool. And then volunteer. Give back a minimum of 2 opportunities per quarter. So when you visit this organization as a guest, you recognize what you're getting into because they have very clear expectations, rules, whatever it might be. You can attend 3 meetings as a guest, but then you will be asked to consider joining. And the official membership there's a list of the official members and they have some expectations, as I just said. So that was kind of cool. I experienced it today. I saw the distinction between the way we were to be running the meetings when I was the partner and now how they do it here. And it's very successful and very engaging and just a lot of fun to be there. So then I started thinking about other organizations that have rules and what is the purpose of rules. And then I started thinking about the government. The government of the United States of America was probably put together so that we would have expectations. We would have things that we can expect from our government, and sometimes it feels like we've gotten a little bit out of alignment recently. But if we're worried about making mistakes and we're worried about doing things wrong, we kind of don't engage as much as we might if we knew that there was some grace in the culture of the organization. So I heard somebody say, I'm not going to tell you who, but I heard somebody say recently that the government has one job. The government's job is to make people more free. And if you think back to why the United States of America was created, it was to free us from the tyranny of the king, right? So government's job is to make people more free, and it does that in 3 ways. Number one, it provides services from national defense to sewage. So it keeps us free by providing services to us. The second one, to get in the way of people who make you unfree. The government's job is to get in the way of people who make you unfree. From banks to cable companies to your neighbor, if there wasn't someone to stand in the way, they might harm you. So the stand in the way is the government. The laws, the rules, they're there to keep us more free. And then the third one was to constrain itself. Checks and balances to make sure that it's not getting too big or getting too restrictive. So if that's why the government was created, that makes perfect sense to me. We need some rules so that we can be sure that we are in alignment. And this person who I heard talking was saying that right now there are a lot of things that are being thrown away as far as government regulations, which, there maybe needed to be. There were things that maybe weren't working the way they were intended to be working back 250 years ago when the United States was born as a nation. And this person was saying, and when we throw things out and we need to start over because something wasn't working, there are people who really want to jump back in and put it back to the way it was when things settle back down. It's kind of like thinking of shaking up a snow globe and the snow is flying all over. And once it settles, do we go back and fix everything? Which fix means to put it back to the way it was? Or do we look at things and go, okay, maybe there's a new way to do this. Maybe things have to get broken so that we can recreate them, not fix them, not put them back to the way they were. And I thought that was really interesting. So we want to create a government that works for people. We were by the people and for the people. That's kind of how we were born. And so rules are simply agreements. And by the way, I don't tell you who the person is who said that because I don't want politics to get in the way of government. I think they're two different things. And politics has gotten so sided that we've kind of sometimes forgotten what the government's there to do. So if we're worried about making mistakes, we won't show up authentically. We won't show up our fully self-expressed humans that we are. And so that really gave me some basis to have this conversation today. And so I was thinking about, again, fixing something, putting it back to the way it was. And then I started thinking about 2020, the year 2020, when everything just went crazy. We shut everything down. And this is not a political statement, whether you're on one side or the other. I don't mean for it to be like that was bad or that was good, whatever. It just was what it was in hindsight. And I think what people were talking about in 2021, late 2020 and 2021 was, when are we going to get back to the normal? When are we going to get back to normal? And they wanted to go back to the way it was. And some people were even saying, well, we're going to have to experience a new normal. And so I started thinking about the word normal. And I love this definition or this concept of normal from the book Orbiting the Giant Hairball. If you've not seen that book, it's one of my favorites by Gordon MacKenzie. And he talks about normal in the book. He says normal is of or conforming to the accepted model, pattern, or standard. That's the first definition he uses. And the second one is not abnormal, which is kind of funny. But creativity and genius, he says, have not so much to do with being normal as with being original. So again, going back to the way the United States was created, it wasn't to be normal per se, it was to be original. We were doing things to escape tyranny, and we were building from scratch. So original is having to do with an origin, source, or beginning. That's the first definition. The second one is never having existed before. And the third is created or invented independent of already existing ideas or works. So I'm sure that the Founding Fathers had some sort of basis in something that had already existed as they developed this. So I don't know if it was completely created or invented independent of already existing ideas or works, but that's originality. That's being original. And so, if we could figure out an original way of doing what works for us, I go back to this networking group. They didn't create it from scratch necessarily. I mean, there were reasons that people get together that they wanted to enhance, perhaps, and honor, maybe in some ways. So a rule or an agreement is important, and a rule or an agreement without being adhered to or followed doesn't really give a lot of teeth to the rule itself. And chaos can ensue if there are no rules to follow. Going back to driving on a certain side of the road, or agreeing that green means go and red means stop in our traffic signals. So without rules, it could be not only chaotic but dangerous and life threatening, because nature abhors a vacuum. When there's nothing, nature will do its best to fill it in with something else. And usually that's in the context of fixing, putting back to the way it was. And so, thinking about all these things and thinking about fundamentals and thinking about rules, I'm not necessarily in love with following rules, but I find myself doing it all the time anyway. I agree with rules typically. And while I'd like to think I'm more of a rebel and more of a, free spirit and a free thinker, I am in respect for rules that have been put in place for reasons beyond my understanding. I might call those purposes. Like, a purpose is beyond my understanding. Reason is I have to figure it out. Sometimes there are things that were put in place for a purpose, which is broader than a reason. And when we as humans start getting in our own heads about how we're better than somebody else, or we know better, or my way is better, or follow me, don't think about anybody else, I think I can't I can't unsee that comes from an ego space. And ego is kind of based on fear. Ego is fear of what will happen if somebody has a better idea than I do. I've made the rules, so these are the rules we need to follow. And then I'm thinking about the golden rule, which is the one that most religions have in common. The golden rule, which says, do unto others as you would have done unto you. And sometimes we mix that up, maybe everywhere, but I only live here in America, the United States, where I would say it kind of occurs sometimes as those who have the gold make the rules. And if that's true, then some of those rules may need to be challenged and may need to be questioned and may need to be updated, may need to be thrown out. Because if it's only the people with the gold who make the rules, then we're really not living in a space that's best for most. And maybe, I'm thinking then of not just the golden rule of living, but the platinum rule that I first learned from Dr. Tony Alessandra, which is communicate with others the way they want to be communicated with. Do unto others the way they want to be done unto, not the way I do. Because if I do that's kind of selfish. The way I want the world to be done unto, or the way I think everybody should be done unto, limits the possibilities and says that there is one right way, and if you don't do it that way, you're doing it wrong. So rules can be kind of squishy and yet put into place for noble reasons, and then in some cases maybe even higher purposes. And what I guess is missing when we don't take into account what's behind the rule is trust and is respect and is a lot of these kind of squishy, maybe touchy-feely concepts, which we tend to lose in some cases when we let our egos get in the way. And so if we could just go back to government, the way it was created, and take a look at what it's there for. And again, I'll just recap what I said earlier. The government's job is to make people more free. Simple. The government's job is to make people more free. And it does that in three ways. One, provides services. Two, gets in the way of people who make you unfree, because if there weren't someone to stand in the way, they'd harm you. And three, to constrain itself. And this would be a government that works for the people. So hard to argue with that. And I'd love you to tell me if you hear it, if you're hearing it differently and you have another way of thinking of government. I'd love to hear. I'd love your perspective on that. And also, not knowing who I heard that from, I think allows a more open conversation. I had a virtual conversation with someone about a concept I had heard on a certain radio station, and the concept was lost as soon as the person asked me which radio station I heard it on. And he missed the point of the conversation because of the source. And so I kind of wish there were an opportunity to have critical thinking kinds of conversations without taking a look at the source first to see whether there's something we can agree on, and then take a look at the source. I'm reminded of a Henry Ford quote that I used for a long time as I was giving my talks. It was, "Thinking is the hardest work people are ever going to do," which is probably the reason so few people do it. I thought it was a great point. But someone challenged me on the source of the quote and said that human was flawed and whatever. She had all kinds of reasons why I shouldn't take that thought from that human. And I think sometimes we miss the point. I'm not justifying any of Henry Ford's behaviors, anti-Semitism, misogyny, anything that he was. And I'm hopeful that humans can evolve in their behavior when more information is presented. I don't always see that, especially in these divisive times that we are seeing ourselves in. I don't always see that we tend to evolve. I'm seeing more, is devolution a word? Devolution? Devolving? I'm seeing more devolving, because when people get into this space of wanting to be right over wanting to be learning focused and open and curious, we aren't showing the best of ourselves to the rest of the world or to ourselves. When we're trying to limit our opportunities, limit our freedoms, I think we get more like what we were trying to escape back in 1776. And so I'm just curious. And again, I could be completely wrong about any of this, so I would welcome your feedback in the comments or listening later, because I am doing my best to remain open, curious, and committed to learning, which means I could be completely wrong. And when I'm given new information, new opportunities, I'm happy to change my mind. So please engage. Do what this networking group said to do in their expectations. Engage. Come ready to energize and be energized. I really like that. And so if you could just think about your own life, what are your non-negotiables? What are you looking for in your own life? Are you looking to be normal? Are you looking to tap into your originality? Are you looking to be a rule follower? Are you looking to put more rules in place? Are you seeing the value of rules? All of these are huge wonders and ponders for me. And I would love it if you had anything to contribute and you'd like to do that. Put it in the comments. And I have a couple of favors to ask at the end of this episode. I've got some courses and learning opportunities coming up, and I'd love your help in spreading the word. My Get Real intensive course is coming up mid-June. You can go to getrealcircle.com and find out more information about that course. I really believe that course is, well, it was for me, it was very fundamental. Going back to fun and mental with duh in the middle, a fundamental building block for going beyond my current understanding and getting rid of some limiting beliefs I didn't even know I had in a safe and supportive cohort of others. So I'd love help in spreading that word. It's limited to 10 people, so it's not a big course, and it's virtual and live. Starts the middle of June. So that's one. We're also studying the book Think and Grow Rich in 10 Minutes a Day, which is a little short book which will highlight the principles of Think and Grow Rich in more of a quick way, We're starting that study middle of June as well. That's Wednesdays from 11 to 12 Central. $149. The book's included in that for 6 weeks. So that would be another engagement opportunity. I will be doing more speaking coming up. If you have any need for a keynote or any kind of breakout speaker for a convention or a conference you have coming up, I'd love it if you would consider me, because some of these ideas are what I'd like to get people thinking, wondering, and pondering about. So there you have it. I'll put information on those upcoming events in the show notes. And maybe you could help me also spread the word about this podcast, Circle Up and Get Real, wherever you get your podcasts, or on my YouTube channel, Get Real with Jodee Bach. So as always, everybody, find a way this week to dip your toe, maybe your whole foot, into the concept of getting real. And you will find, I think, that the more real you get, the more you attract the forces you wish to use and the cooperation of other people who are on that same wavelength. You have to go first. Part of it is us going first. And when we go first, we then can start to recognize that, wow, the universe conspires on my behalf when I'm going in a direction that I choose. So lots to think about, lots to unpack. Go get real, and thanks for being with me today, everybody.